Let's go ahead and get started.
Where does she live? Rockford?
We have a few new guests tonight. Welcome, and we hope you enjoy the presentation tonight. And we hope, obviously, that you'll join. It's well worth the $20. We have a lot of interesting presentations. We go on outings together, so I think you'll get your money's worth out of the clubs. Welcome to our guests tonight. Our leadership has been discussing the club Facebook, whether we're going to continue on with it. We decided that we are, and we've seen a lot of good engagement lately. And if you're on Facebook and you see a post, like it, interact with it, because that helps our reach, the way the algorithms work. It's an algorithm game. It helps our reach, more people will see it, and hopefully more people will join us on Facebook and our club. So, and that goes for Instagram too. If you're on Instagram, our club's on there. We also have a YouTube site, and the videos like tonight I post on there for members only for 6 months. So that's another good resource for you. Kim has been working hard to work with the Urbana Free Library. They have given us an opportunity to display some prints in January. And it would be in the library display right by the front door. And we're going to need 8 by 10 prints, and they'll be mounted to 11 by 14 in frames that the club provides. Mary's been working on this. She's been our frame purchaser. So. But all you will have to provide is an 8 by 10 print.
There's two versions. There's this version, which they only had 5 of, so we're going to put them on the one wall. I mean the 2 side walls. And then there's a mat inside of another fairly thick beveled frame like this. That's going to look enough like the other one that it should be cohesive. So when are we going to get commitments? Martha called and said she wasn't going to be able to come, but that if there were enough spots, she'd be happy to do a nature.
So, yeah. And we're going to need 9 total, correct?
9 to 11. We can have 9, at least 9, and we can get up to 11 too.
Okay.
So, and they can be portrait or landscape.
That's nature. Okay.
And nature, hand of man is okay, as long as nature is the prime focus of the photo.
Yeah, it doesn't have to meet SICA standards for nature.
Right.
Yes.
Do these have to be taken in the last year?
No. Anytime.
Anytime.
No time limit.
This is not best to change.
Yeah, this is just a way for our club members to promote the club and be able to show their prints. And like I say, we'll take up to 11. So we'll see how that goes. We're kind of excited about it.
Allow us to advertise the club a little?
Yeah. Yes. So there'll be a place. There'll be like an acrylic display at the side on the wall that we can put in our brochures, as well as Best in Show poster and Best in Show entry forms if you want that too.
Right. Okay. One other question. Seems to me there was something about, do we need to put a wire on the frame?
Yes.
That's the other thing.
Yes.
Hobby Lobby charges $3 to put the wire, including the wire and the labor. Michael's charges $5.
I can do
So
it for free.
Oh, I was going to say. So if we buy the thingies, you could do it for us? That would be great.
Thank you.
I used to work in a custom do-it-yourself frame shop, so
Yay!
I can do it.
Well, thank you. We appreciate that.
Yeah. So they're going to be displayed in the month of January and the month of February. And so I would need if you let me know if you want to do it. If we were asking just one image, and then if it gets closer and we find we need more, we'll let you know. But for now, 1 image per person. So let me know afterwards, and I can write it down and I'll forget it. And I would need it we're wanting to, I'm trying to put it up like the first week in January, like January 5th, we want to get it to the library, so I'll give you that weekend of New Year's Day, and then that would be the deadline. I'll send out an email and let you know the deadline. So you've got through December, but I would need by the end of December the image name that you're wanting to put on it, because we are also going to make labels to go underneath the prints. So I would need to have those ahead of time, so we'd have time to make those. So we would put your title and the photographer's name in it.
Okay.
Okay.
And we had pretty well decided for cohesiveness, we wanted all color ones, correct?
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Color, yeah, no black and
Okay.
white, just color.
And then in December, our outing is going to be Christmas lights. I found two pretty good choices. Allerton Park is always a good choice to walk through. Shelbyville is another option. It's around an hour and 20 minutes away. They normally do drive-through only, but I did have communication with us. They would let us walk through. Just an informal poll tonight. Is anybody interested in going to Shelbyville, or would you prefer Allerton? Shelbyville, Allerton Park.
Yeah, but
Okay,
what day are we looking at?
we'll probably do Allerton.
Saturday the 17th.
Yeah, the 17th, December 17th. And we'll get out an agenda now that we know that we're going to Allerton Park. I'll get out an agenda.
Martha and John said count the two of them in.
Okay. And it'll be similar to last year. We'll probably go to Monticello to photograph the trains, a holiday train, and then we'll go out to Allerton Park to do our walkthrough there. So,
Can you order some snow?
yeah, let's hope it's
Yeah.
some snow. Our luck would be a blizzard, right, Al? Oh, my outings have been pretty bad for weather. The next meeting in 2 weeks will be an informal swap meet. If you have a piece of equipment in your bag you'd like to talk about, maybe an unusual tripod or tripod head, a lens, it doesn't matter what it is. You can be more than happy to stand up here and tell members about it. Otherwise, it'd be a swap meet. You can sell equipment, look around, buy equipment, swap equipment. And are we going to allow food in?
Yeah, we
Yeah.
could do. Mary, our hostess,
Okay,
plan that, yeah.
okay,
Have a, just finger food or something.
yeah, right,
But yeah,
But people
yeah.
will have to bring their own water bottles, because probably we should not
right,
have
clear liquids,
punch.
clear liquids
All
only, I
over
don't think they'll allow, anything like Pepsi or coffee, the clear liquids only would be fine.
And I
Would be
think,
fine.
I think we were discussing how, we wanted it to be a little informal, so at a time that we could just kind of mingle and hang out, and, after we do the bag thing,
Right,
after we show our bags. And then afterwards, we can just kind of look, I'm thinking of putting stuff in the back, have it in the back table, and you can kind of just shop and, talk to people.
Can we get another table from the library so we can have food on one and
Yeah, that's a good idea.
Are
Are we gonna be over there though then?
We'll still be in this room.
Oh, I
Okay.
thought, okay.
Yeah, we'll still be in this room. So yeah, that's a good idea, get another table.
and there will be some meetings in January. We'll be moving across the hall, and one of our March meetings will be in the room upstairs. So we'll make sure you're informed about which room to go in. Otherwise, that's all I have. We have two speakers tonight telling about trips they've taken. First up will be Susan Coulter on her trip to Alaska, and then after that will be Jim McEnerney with his trip to Vietnam. So let's welcome Susan.
So, when I was younger in high school, I used to watch a TV show called The Love Boat. And if you've watched it, it was really bad. It's a really bad show. I rewatched it and it's awful. But it just gave me this desire to take a cruise. And so all my life I've wanted to go on a cruise. I've also wanted to go to Alaska. So this summer I was able to merge those two things and cruise to Alaska. So I did that in June of this year, and we sailed out of Seattle and then up through the Inside Passage and then back down. Another thing I've always wanted to do is I have never seen like granite mountains. I've only seen like Smoky Mountains and tree-covered mountains. I've never seen like the Rockies or anything like that, and that's always something that I've wanted to see. And I got to see those for the first time on this trip as well. But I saw them from the airplane. And on this trip, we flew completely under the cloud cover, and so going over, I think it was Montana, Wyoming, I don't know which one, but it was just miles and miles and miles and miles of these snow-capped peaks, and just nothing else. There was no buildings, there was no roads, it was just pure mountains, and it was one of the coolest things I've ever seen, especially looking out a plane window. So that was one of the very first things I got to check off my bucket list, was seeing Granite Mountains. Not the way I thought I would, but I did get to see them. The second thing was taking a cruise, and I got to go on the Love Boat too. So this was a brand spanking new boat. It was only 2 months old when we cruised on it, and it was amazing. She was beautiful. And it was a great way to take the ride up through the Inside Passage. It was just a beautiful, beautiful ship. Our first stop was in Ketchikan, Alaska. And this is a little community on the south side of Alaska, kind of way on the southwestern actually. It's actually right next to Canada. It's like this little finger that kind of comes down, and it has a few little towns in the way, but Ketchikan's the first one. They're known for logging. They do a lot of logging there. They also do a lot of salmon fishing. And all of the buildings are up against this mountain because there's really no land from the time that you get off the ship to getting to the mountain. It's just, it's right there. And so most everything is up a hill. And that day we got there, it was overcast, and there was a lot of mist, and there was a lot of, I don't want to say fog, but it was just very moody that day. I took an excursion, and it was a rainforest hike photography tour. And I was very, very excited about it. Well, this was the only thing of the rainforest I saw that day, just this. And basically I had to kind of leave the group and go off and find this. We never entered the rainforest. But this is a little snippet I got to go into with these huge trees. I mean, they were absolutely huge. And it was just beautiful in there. Lots of the dripping moss and everything. It was really, really pretty. But this is all I got to see of the rainforest during my rainforest excursion. I also got to see Alfredo and Francesca. This is I think they call them a pair, they're a pair, and they mate for life. And up in the tree, off to their right, the very tip top was a huge nest that had 2 little babies in it. And they were feeding, but they were down here resting and kind of getting away from the kids a little bit. But they sat there for the longest time. And I have no clue which one's Alfredo, and I have no clue which one's Francesca. But that was as close as I've ever gotten to bald eagles before, and it was really pretty awesome.
Were you still you were out off the boat?
That was part of the rainforest tour.
Oh.
And so was this, the rainforest tour. So, I'm not bitter about that at all. But, so this is, it's a recently built, it's a kind of a remake, I don't know what the word you'd use, but, and this is where the indigenous peoples years, like hundreds of years ago, would have stayed. And a whole family, a whole clan would have lived in this building in the center down below. Would have been a fire that they would have used for heat and for cooking. And on one end of it, on the kind of behind where I'm taking the picture, there was a small kind of tunnel from the outside that came in, and they would have to crawl in. And this kept anybody from coming in and attacking them, because they wouldn't have been able to fit with weapons, and it would have taken them too long to get there that they would have been noticed before they got in there. And so it was a form of protection for them. And the whole family would have lived in there, and the chief and everybody would have lived in there. And it was a pretty interesting thing. The heat would rise up, and then the little doorway would also, which was always open, provide ventilation so it didn't get too smoky. So it was kind of an engineering, you know, kind of a neat thing, because it actually ventilated very, very well. And then this is a traditional totem pole, and the chieftain, the leader would always be at the top, and then by rank, they would carve in the people in the tribe, and the one with the lowest rank was low man on the totem pole. So I guess that's where that came from. So after a day in Ketchikan, we then, this was the beach, and it was about 50 degrees that day, and this seaweed here, when you walked on it, it popped like bubble wrap. It was really, really bizarre. And every day the tide would come in and it would go up almost to the tree line, and this whole thing would be covered in water. But it was low tide that day when we were there, but they said by the evening it would be completely, the water would be all the way up. And there were little shells and different little things that you could see that were left behind when the tide went out. The seaweed had little creatures that lived in it as well, and they would survive until the tide came back in, and then hopefully they'd get washed back out to sea. But it was misty and moody the whole day. Now it was about 50 degrees, and when we got there, there was a family down by the beach swimming in that cold water, which is about 40 degrees. They were swimming, the whole family. And when they got done, they put their parkas on and went back to the car, and they left. So it was just a little bizarre, The next day, we were in Juneau, Alaska, which is the capital of Alaska. It is also the only, landlocked capital in the U.S. The only way to get there is by boat or by seaplane. You cannot drive there. It is completely surrounded by mountains that are impassable. So those are the only ways you can get there. When I was in Juneau, I took another excursion, and this was a whale watching excursion. And so we got on this little boat, and we went way out in these, we traveled about 20 minutes way out, and one of the first things we came to was this buoy with all of these sea lions on them, and we got pretty close to them, and they're really disgusting. I mean, they're just really gross, and they have these nicks in them from fighting, because they fight each other, and they all have big like chunks of their flesh that's missing. But they would just lay there all day, then they would get out and go get something to eat, but they would lay up there because the killer whales, or the orcas, like to eat them, so they would try to find a place where they could hide out during the day, and only go down if they needed to get something to eat. And then we saw whales. This was a baby humpback whale breaching, and they think probably for one of the first times in his life, he's still learning how to breach. We were pretty far away from him. We didn't get real close to him. And that was another thing on my bucket list, was to get some whale shots. So this was one of the first ones I got. It's not the greatest, but they get a little better. This is a whale tail. This was a female whale. They were able to tell which whale it was by the different nicks and kind of the cuts and the markings on the tail. They were able to kind of look through their little chart and figure out that this was a new mama. She had a baby with her, and they'd be kind of keeping their eye on her. And then this was another one, and they could not figure out who this one was, but this one was probably my favorite whale tail picture I got. We were actually very far away, and I wasn't even sure I got the shot until I got it home, and so this is very cropped in. The photos would be a lot better, except for I accidentally shot everything in JPEG. So there wasn't a whole lot I could do with them when I got them home. But this was a bucket list shot. This is one of my favorite shots from the trip, and I just absolutely love it. So, and then there's another little baby kind of out there kind of doing his thing, and then another from the same company that I did my excursion with, they had another boat out there as well. If you ever go to Alaska, Gastineau Guides is who I did the excursion with, and they were absolutely fantastic. After we were done with that, we went on a little hike out by the Mendenhall Glacier in Juneau. And so we were just coming out of kind of where the parking area was, and we turned the corner, and here it is. Now behind those trees, kind of in the center, is where the actual Mendenhall Glacier is. We couldn't see it from this vantage point, But I just love these mountains with the green and some of the flowers. It was just, and this is like one of the very few days we had sunshine like this. But then we were able to get a little bit closer to the glacier. Now off to the right, there's like, you can see the corner of a little waterfall coming down. That is called Nugget Falls, and it is absolutely huge. If you come into the glacier area from the visitor center, which is kind of down here, you can actually walk out onto a sandbar right in front of the waterfall, and then also kind of out in front of the glacier and get a lot better view of the glacier. This glacier has retreated, I don't know, retreated, it's shrunk up. It used to be literally past this direction, and it is now that far up. So it is actually starting to shrink quite a bit. And then this is a better shot of the glacier. We were kind of hoping it would calve while we were there so we could see the big chunks fall off, but it didn't. But it's absolutely massive. It's pretty impressive. Now these are a little out of order. These shots actually were before I went on the whale watching tour. And this is when we did a glacier tour on the ship. And it's like just slowly moving through these fjords. And we were going back up into the Endicott Arm and going to see the Dawes Glacier. And so we started at about 4 o'clock in the morning. And we did this, I think, up until about 9:30. And I was out there at 4:30 taking pictures the whole time. I have a ton of these pictures. But the water was just perfectly still, and all these little icebergs out there. It was just absolutely gorgeous. This is one of my favorite shots just because it has so many different, almost, you have the mountain with the trees, you have the Rocky Mountain, you have the snow, just all these different kind of little ecosystems within these little mountains and these little fjords. And you can weave back into these fjords, way back in there to the point where you would get lost. I mean, it just keeps going forever. And then this is another shot as well. It was just absolutely stunning.
Was that a side trip, or did you get
This
the
was
great
on the
big-
ship. This was
Oh,
on the
okay.
ship, yeah.
So they were able to get the whole ship in?
Yeah, we didn't actually get back to the glacier because there's too many icebergs and it was too dangerous. And the day before, another ship had hit an iceberg and had to, leave. It had to go get fixed. It actually broke the ship. I don't know how you hit an iceberg this day and age, but they did. This was another shot of it, and as you can see, the sun is kind of coming up, and so yeah, it was just absolutely gorgeous. And then that might be the same one. Well, we were supposed to go to Skagway, and we couldn't because there was 3 landslides the week before that fell onto the dock and the pier where we were supposed to dock, so we could not go there. So they took us to Icy Strait Point instead. And this was it's kind of a rinky-dink little dock, really. It was really tiny, and it just really was very strange. There wasn't a lot to do there, but we did manage to go over to a little rock beach, and so I got some shots from there. This is a fishing boat that was coming out from the village to go out and head out and go shipping, or go fishing. There were quite a few of those, and they would just kind of come and go. I don't know if they were getting salmon or if they were going out to get crab or what, but they were headed out. And this was a tree line along one of the banks there, and the sun had finally come out and kind of hit the trees a little bit, and it was just really, it was cold there too as well. It was really cold. And so it was just kind of a nice, pretty, peaceful scene. And another little fishing boat coming out. We did not know this until we got back on the ship, and I actually started kind of looking into it. If we would have just gone around that corner, there's a whole town over there, and with all the little things that you can do, and we didn't even know it was there. I just thought it was more wilderness, and so we didn't go any further. We could have just walked on the corner. So we kind of missed out on that one, but it was still very, very pretty there. And we walked around a lot, and then this was the mountains across from where we were standing, and they were just, the fog or the clouds were coming in, but the sun was just kind of hitting the tops of the mountains, and it was just absolutely, it was stunning.
I've got a question. Is this in the Juneau area still?
This is north of Juneau and Icy Strait Point. It's actually We were supposed to go north to Skagway, but we missed that one, so we went even further north to Icy Strait Point. And it was right at the northern part of the Inside Passage, so like right where you would turn to go back out of it, is where this was.
Yeah.
And again, there was stuff to do, but we did not know it. And then this was that night after we got on the ship and we were leaving. The sun was getting ready to go down. This was about 9:30 or 10 o'clock at night. And I just loved the layers of the mountains and how they just kind of got darker. And with this is, and the whole area just looked like this forever and ever. And that is it. That was our last day before we sailed back to Seattle. So that was it.
I got another question. I'd like to know what the parallel lines are for about 1/4 of the way up the picture. Is that
That's
water
just
or
the water,
sand?
where it's kind of like little ripply waves, and just
Yeah.
when the sun was just hitting it and causing that
It's unbelievable.
color, yeah, and it was, I didn't really do much with that. I think I gave it a little bit of contrast, but for the most part, that's how it looked.
Susan,
Yes.
what were you shooting with, and what particular ones were you using?
Mostly I shot with my 70 to 300,
Okay.
so I could not get any of the ship in it. That was what I shot everything with, for the most part.
Okay. I love your photos, they're great.
Yeah. I had a question about your whale tails.
Yeah.
Did you not have any luck getting them as they breached the water coming out?
Well, and most of them didn't do that. So you watch for the little spurt of water from their blowhole, and then when that happened, I had it on a very high shutter speed, a very fast shutter speed. So I just started pushing the button down and just held it until it was done. And a lot of times they would come up, there'd be like a little bit of a hump, and then the tail would come up.
Okay.
The only time we saw one actually come up and go out was a baby.
Okay.
But mostly they just kind of came up and then went down, then the tails would come up.
But I can imagine it'd be hard to,
Oh, yeah.
by the time you got it in your frame, it's down, gone.
Yeah.
So,
And we were really far away, so I wasn't even sure I got it at all until I got home and put it on the computer.
cool. Thank you.
Thank you.
These are some great images. I really love this one. And I think one of the well ones would make a great library print photograph coming out.
You've been to Alaska. You've been to Alaska, right? You've been more than once.
I could go again.
I know, I have to go back, because I well, first off, I want to shoot in RAW, not JPEG. But yeah, I want to go back, but yeah.
I went in September to Vietnam, and just for, I'm sure all of you know where Vietnam is, but for reference in size, Vietnam, compared to the state of California, is about 28% smaller in land mass. But it has 2.5 times more the population. So huge amount of people in Vietnam, and everywhere you go you see a lot of people. It's because they're a very populous country. I went with a trip, a company called Overseas Adventure Travel, and usually they deal in small groups. Our group was 12 people. I think they have no more than 16. For COVID, Vietnam was closed down. It was locked down. And the first trip open was in September, the one I went on. So we were the first people to go to Vietnam with this in 2.5 years. Flew from Chicago to Tokyo, and then Tokyo down to Hanoi. Hanoi is now the capital of Vietnam. It was the capital of North Vietnam, now it's the capital of the whole country of Vietnam. Overland we went to Halong Bay and took a 2-day cruise in Halong Bay. Halong Bay is a beautiful bay. It's a World UNESCO site. Then flew to the city of Hue. Hue is an old capital of Vietnam. It was when Vietnam was ruled by the Nguyen dynasty, 1700 to 1850. And then we went to port city of Hoi An. Hoi An's a beautiful city, has an old town, and I'll show some shots. I went to Da Nang, saw China Beach. We had a U.S. base in Da Nang. Hue, Da Nang, and Hoi, and everything south of there was with South Vietnam during the war. Then we flew to Nha Trang, another coastal city, saw some beautiful things there. Went overland to a mountain town of Dalat, which is a mile-high city, kind of like Denver. And then flew to what used to be called Saigon, now it's called Ho Chi Minh City. From Ho Chi Minh City, went to the Mekong Delta. The Mekong River runs from China all the way down to the Delta here. But we went on the riverboat cruise there on the Mekong Delta. And then we went to the Cu Chi tunnels where the Viet Cong hid out during the war. The U.S. often were searching this area for them, right near the border of Cambodia. But I'll show a little bit from there. There's 99 million people in Vietnam, and 65 million motorcycles. Almost one motorcycle for every adult. Although most people go as a family. Here's a grandmother and daughter and son. And the adults are required to wear helmets. And they're required to wear masks when they're out of doors, at least in September. But the kids, no helmets. And so I was very worried about these children because everywhere you see the kids, they're on the handlebars, or in between the parents, or on the back. And very rarely do you see a kid with a helmet. Food was very plentiful. Food was very good. A lot of rice, but a lot of vegetables, and the markets were well-stocked, colorful food, and this is in Hanoi. This is the lake where John McCain was shot down. John McCain was a senator from Arizona, and during the Vietnam War, he was a pilot. He had 24 bombing missions, and this was his last one. He was coming into this lake to bomb a power plant, which was on the north shore, and he was shot down and captured by the Vietnamese. And in the prison where he was, the Hanoi is euphemistically called the Hanoi Hilton, but it's a How Lo prison. They have pictures of his capture. So here you see John McCain with all the North Vietnamese who captured him. And the prison, at the time that John McCain there, was very distasteful. This is after the war, what it looked like. John McCain spent half of his 5.5 years in prison in solitary confinement. But as you go through the tour, now the prison's open for tours, but as you go through that prison, they tried to make it look like they took good care of John McCain and that it was really a nice place to be, which, if you read his memoirs, it wasn't a nice place. Here, they shackled the prisoners to these tables at night, and this was the good area. If you were a good prisoner, you got to be in the group setting. But half of John McCain's time, he was in solitary confinement, so in a 10 by 10 foot room. But also in the prison, they have these propaganda pictures showing how good they had the doctors take care of John McCain after he was shot down. He had broken his arm and both legs, and they're saying what good care they provided him. They claimed that he had a Christmas tree, got to decorate at Christmas time, but again, although I believe that's John McCain, it's hard to believe that most of his time was pleasant there. It was not a pleasant time. After the war, John McCain worked to increase relations between the United States and Vietnam. And so he was instrumental in 1995, the U.S. Established full diplomatic relations with Vietnam. And so they have this memorial, and this is outside the lake where he was shot down, to John McCain. Mm-hmm. And when John McCain died, he was so well respected by the North Vietnamese people that many of the North Vietnamese soldiers came and they laid flowers and found it as a memorial here. So during the war, he had a rough time, but afterwards he worked to improve our relations, and they really like him there in northern North Vietnam. In the U.S., if you're in a new city, New York, Chicago, you get a cab. It used to be a yellow cab. Here, if you want to go somewhere in Hanoi, you look for a guy with a Grab T-shirt. You could flag them down, and they'll take you wherever you want to go, or you could go on your phone on the app and tell them you need a ride, and they'll drive you to whatever location you want to go. And to go across town, it would cost maybe $2. So everything in Hanoi, everything in Vietnam is very inexpensive. I stayed at a hotel that the tour went to for 2 extra nights, and it was like a 3-star hotel, 4-star hotel, and one night there, including breakfast, was only $25 a night. So everything is fairly inexpensively priced. This is the Temple of Literature. It's in Hanoi. This was the university in Hanoi from the year 1070 up until 1750. And between 1400 and 750, they had a doctoral program here. Every 3 years, they gave the doctoral exam. And so over 1,000 people got their doctorate from this Temple of Literature. Now it's not a university, it's more of a public park, and so people come there on the weekends or any day to bring their family to take pictures and walk around. You can see the young girl with their family getting her picture taken in front. People dress mostly in Western gear as you walk through Vietnam, but for engagement pictures or family photos, they'll often dress in traditional Vietnamese costume. And so here's a couple who's getting engaged. They came to the Temple of Literature to get their picture taken, and I just happened to be there when they were getting it done, so I got a shot. In the inner courtyard, around this courtyard, they have 89 stela that still exist from the people who got their doctorate degree from the university that was here. After the Nguyen dynasty started, they moved the university down to Hue, but for 700 years it was in Hanoi. Another couple getting their engagement photo. The gardens are beautiful, so it's a great place to go and get your picture taken if you're wanting to send it out to your friends and relatives. Here I'm going on a rickshaw, and we're going out to dinner. And we're in the old quarter of the city, riding on a rickshaw, and it's a little bit around rush hour. You see what's going out to dinner. You can see there's a lot of traffic. Old quarter, and probably safer to drive by car or walk, but here we are.
Looks like campus.
Many of you have seen Anthony Bourdain. He traveled around the world and had eaten at different restaurants, and Kathy Bennett told me about his Vietnam show, so I started watching them, and he had several places that I ate at that he had in his shows, but this was one in Hanoi, and he had a show where Obama was in Hanoi visiting, and so they went and ate dinner there. They only have one dish. It's a beef noodle dish, which is really delicious, and maybe it cost $2 for that, but really good food. And on the wall of the restaurant, they have a picture of Obama and Bourdain. In my hotel, they have the sign on the door, the way we have what time you have to exit the hotel. Here it says, if I was caught with durian in my hotel room, I would have to pay a fine of $10,000 US.
Oh, wow.
Which would be about 3 years of salary for the average Vietnamese. or 230 million Vietnam dong, which is their currency. I thought, what could this durian be? But I never heard of durian. I thought maybe it's a hallucinogen or a narcotic or a mushroom. But I asked my tour guide, and he took us to a market so we could try durian.
Sorry.
So here's the lady selling durian. And so this is the durian. It's actually a fruit, but it's a fruit that people say have a disgusting smell.
Yeah.
And so it doesn't taste terrible, maybe like a bad pineapple, but the smell is more like raw sewage. And if you get drops of that on your hotel floor or on the counter, it stays in that for months. And so they don't want you bringing it in the hotel. And so we each got to try a little bit of durian. It was bad, but it wasn't the worst possible imaginative thing. But no one asked for seconds.
Yeah, I had better experience than I did.
Have you had it?
Yeah, I had it in liquid form.
Yeah.
Chinatown in Chicago, and I thought, okay, it's a fruit smoothie, what could go wrong with it? But I took a sip of it, and it was like straight up onion juice. Like, it was not pleasant.
We didn't. We have more.
So I'm kind of scarred from doing over that.
Yeah, I think durian's a hard pass for me.
Yeah.
Well, thanks, Jim.
Yeah.
Ho Chi Minh was a leader of the Vietnamese people before the war in the north, and then during the war, and then he died in the middle of the war. He died in '67. His dream for his body after he died was to be cremated and have his ashes distributed in the north and the south. But the people in North Vietnam had a different idea for him. When he died, they took his body and they sent it to Moscow. And there they had preserved Lenin's body so well, if you've ever read about Lenin in Moscow, Red Square. So here they preserved his body. Now it's 50 years later, and he is in this big mausoleum, which is air-conditioned. And you get to walk through there and look at Ho Chi Minh's body. But they have guards. You can't really stay very long there. You have to move quickly through. But he is there now, and they call him Uncle Ho as a friendly term, as being one of their leaders that promised that communism would be helpful to the common man. I think many people are disillusioned now with what has happened after the war with the effect of communism, but his body is there in the mausoleum. As far as the religion in Vietnam, if you want to be a Communist Party member, you have to be an atheist or have no declared religion. So 73% of the people in Vietnam either have no religion or folk religions, but there are organized religions. Buddhism is the most common organized religion in the country, but Catholicism is second, and Protestants 1.1%, and then some other ones. But most of the shrines you see are Buddhist, although they have some dedicated to Confucius and Taoism, and there's some Catholic churches that we saw. This is the one-step pagoda. It was built in 1400. A guy was not married, and he finally met the woman of his dreams, and she bore him a son. So he built this pagoda to honor the gods, so that he was thankful for what happened. And so at the top of the steps, they have this Buddhist altar where people come and worship. Our group was 12 people. We divided into 4 groups of 3, and they sent us loose at a market, kind of like an Amazing Race type thing. They told us, here are 4 items we want your group to get. We'll tell you in Vietnamese the name, and you have to remember that, and then go out and try to find it. And so they didn't write it down, they didn't spell it out, and so we had to memorize what we're to get. So we went to the market, and this is traditional market. They have eels and working fish, everything you can imagine here for delicious dinner. like pig's feet, you know, they sell that, or the snout of the pig. These things I'm not even sure or want to know what those things are.
For a moment, I thought it was showing off for dragon fruit. For a moment.
Is it?
No, I thought they looked like dragon fruit.
I think they're tongues.
They're what, tongue?
Tongues.
Tongues, okay.
Nose.
Pick out your bird. And then I think kill them first, and then put them right here and take the rest of it off. And into the bag.
Very fresh.
Yep.
They sell toads. I don't know why, I tried to look it up, but why they tie the band around their abdomen. But all of them had that. Our group got 3 of the 4 things correct. Some of the other groups got none of the things correct. But we brought all the things back, and then we went to a person's house and they cooked lunch for us, and it was edible. The number 2 in Vietnamese is pronounced hai. And so it sounds like the American term for hello. And so when you ask people, especially kids, to get a picture, they'll often do the V symbol or the 2 symbol, meaning hi. We went to this island where their main product was rice. And so they make this rice paper, and everywhere through the town you see these bamboo sheets where they put the rice paper on the sheet and they dry them in the sun. And then they roll the paper up and sell it. They also make rice crackers, and here you can see a motorcyclist, and many of the motorcyclists like this are overloaded with merchandise, but these are the rice crackers, which actually don't taste too bad, but they're bringing the crackers to market.
Here I'm at the intersection in Hanoi. The light is red. People go right through the red light, going straight. Or if they make right turns, they'll go through the red light. Or if they are going left, they'll go right through the red light. They feel they've been warned, and that prevents an accident. Again, it's red light, but all of the motorcycles are just going through.
I looked up how many people died of COVID in Vietnam since the beginning of COVID. And more people died in motor vehicle accidents during the COVID years than died from COVID. So it is a high-risk situation.
That's wacky statistics.
Many of our tour guides and people we met, and went to a lot of people's homes and talked to them away from the public, talk about the corruption in Vietnam. Now, Vietnam has a corrupt government, but it's not as bad as Russia or some of the countries in Africa. This is the Corruption Perception Index. So it's the perceived level of corruption by the people in the country of their public officials. And Vietnam rated 87 out of 180 countries.
Oh, I'd strictly ask who's number 1.
I looked this up about a traveler's guide to Vietnam, and they're telling you how to deal with the police if you're pulled over. Our tour guide told us that he was on a motorcycle and he went through a red light, as everyone does, and police pulled him over, and the cop told him, he said, all right, I'm going to give you a ticket, you have to come down to the precinct and pay your $25 fine. He said, or you can give me $10 and I'll let you free right here. So there's a lot of corruption. They said bribes usually start at 200,000 dong, which would be about $8. But if you're going to ride your own motorcycle in Vietnam, it's best to have some cash with you in case you have to pay off the office. Now, most the corruption starts up high with the Communist Party, because to get a job as a police officer, you have to bribe the officials to get the job. So they bribe the officials, and then you have to bribe them, and it's a very unfortunate system. During the war, the people who fought with the South, who fought with the Americans, were somewhat oppressed or persecuted by the communist government, which took over the whole country. And so this was a wealthy woman. She had owned a family business. She owned her own house. But after the war, they took the business, they took her house. She said she lived under a bridge for 5 years. And then, after a while, there was reconciliation, and they allowed people who fought for the South to get their houses back. So this is her old house. She said it was trashed when she came back to the house. But she wanted to show us her American Vietnamese lamp that she was very proud of. And so many of the people, even people who fought for the North and the Viet Cong that I met, they seemed to be very welcoming to Americans, which was nice. This is in Hanoi, the Citadel. It is where the North planned the war against the South. And so right now it's a public park, and a lot of people bring their families there on the weekend or just to walk around. They have ice cream and things. But in the center of the park, down about 150 feet under the surface, they have this war room. And so this was somewhat impervious to bombing because it was so deep underground. But they would plan the war against the South from here. You can see their picture of Ho Chi Minh. His tomb is not too, maybe a couple miles from where this is. But up on top, up in the park area, people bring their families, and this would be a traditional, Western dress that you see for people in Vietnam. A beautiful park, well worth going to. Also, I enjoyed the war room experience. Those soldiers who fought for the North Vietnam Army, they were North Vietnamese soldiers, and they were killed in action. They were buried by the North at the expense of the government, and so they would put incense over your grave. So that was impressive. If you fought for the North Vietnamese, but you lived in the South and you were Viet Cong, you were unofficially fighting for the North. You weren't really a registered North Vietnamese soldier. They didn't offer the service. So the people who fought for the North but lived in the South, they're somewhat regretful they didn't get the same benefits. If your only son died in the war, they also buried the mothers. Or if you had 2 sons die in the war, they would also bury the mothers in the same cemetery. We spent about a week in Hanoi, and then we went to Ha Long Bay. Ha Long Bay, again, a World UNESCO site. We took this cruise. It's hard to imagine that was a nice ship on the inside, but it was air conditioned, and we each got our own room, so it was fairly nice. Here's the staff, the captain and the 2 sailors with him. And
did they speak English?
no. Maybe yes and no. A few asked water, but not. Our tour guide was bilingual, and he was excellent, so it was easy to. And I was using Google Translate if I had to ask somebody a question. This is the port from my window in my room, looking out at Ha Long Bay. Many of these limestone cliffs, and in those cliffs there were caves, and so one of our stops was at one of the caves to explore. This is inside, looking towards the entrance. And this went maybe a half mile through the cave. You see the stalactites and stalagmites, and you see the natural light coming in. And then as you get out of the cave, again, the entrance to the cave was over here, but you go all the way through the mountain, and then you come out here, you get to look down on Ha Long Bay, and just really a beautiful scene as the sun is starting to get ready to go down.
This looks like a wide-angle shot.
Yeah, this, I think this might have been a fused shot of more than one image, but. At night on the cruise ship, there was no cabaret show, but instead the captain showed us how to cut vegetables. And so he said he studied culinary arts before he went to become a captain, but he did this remarkable
Oh, wow.
spread that was on the table decoration while we watched them do it. In the morning, you know, it was hot in September in Vietnam, but in the bay, and then the morning breezes, it was maybe 68 degrees, very comfortable. We did some Tai Chi here on board. The second in command did the exercise. This is the group that I went with, these other people. This is our tour guide here.
Looks like a good stretch routine. Might not have to try that one.
Then we flew down to Hue. Hue, again, it was the capital of Vietnam from 1700 to 1850. Towards the second part of that duration, during the Nguyen dynasty, the French ruled Indochina, and so they had an emperor, but the French told the emperor what to do. But this was where the emperors lived. This is the center of Hue. And this also is a World UNESCO site. It's a very very colorful place to visit and also to photograph. Some of it, most of it parts of it have been rebuilt because during the Tet Offensive in '68, there was much fighting in Hue, and where the emperor lived inside the citadel, some of that was destroyed. But people come here, like in Hanoi, they come with their traditional Vietnamese outfits to get photographed, and so see a few pictures of people. But really, a very colorful place to take pictures. And this is one of my favorite shots. You can see the new brick there, and then the old brick over there, so they rebuilt.
Did they bring her along to pose, or?
She was there to get her picture taken.
Oh.
Somebody else was arranging that, but I happened to be there, so I took her picture too. Inside the citadel and Hue, they have altars to the Buddhist faith, but then outside the altars they have these incense where people leave flowers and burn incense. But the whole grounds are very colorful, and the landscaping is really amazingly well cared for. And so it's really a nice place to go if you go to Vietnam. It's an important stop to go to Hue. And again, these are people who are coming to have their picture taken. As you can see, there's a lot of colorful things. I love the windows. I took a few window shots, but family photos are very popular in the Forbidden City there. And I love the windows. Really amazing restoration that they've done. Painted, lacquer colored woods. These are two young women who come to take each other's pictures, so you can see the one on the cell phone taking a photograph of the other one. This is a restored area where the emperor lived in the center of the Forbidden City, or the Imperial Citadel. And this is the exit. You can see the guard keeping the people out. Then we went to a Buddhist monastery and met with some Buddhist monks there. This was quite a large area, maybe 50-acre area. And again, outside the altar area, they have these incense where people come and they burn the incense. A lot of people are there to take pictures. This is one of my favorite pictures. You can see me taking the picture in the window, but one of the Buddhist monks either was up too late praying or studying. But, we got a little nap in. We saw this throughout Vietnam. Many times a dragon dance ceremony would occur. People pay these performers to come either to your hotel or to your restaurant or to your house, and they put on a maybe 20-minute show, 20 to 30 minutes. And they have music, and this was the hotel we were staying in, and it so happened somebody hired them to come to the hotel. Then we went to Hoi An. Hoi An is just a little south of Hue. Hoi An is a port city. It was a trading post when China was ruling Vietnam, and then later when the French were there, they used Hoi An. During World War II, the Japanese took it over. The Japanese built this bridge, and they call this the Japanese Covered Bridge. It leads from the new part of the town to the old section of town. And a lot of people go there to have their picture taken in front of the covered bridge. This is in the old section of town. Really a beautiful town. It floods every year. It flooded after I left in October, so much so that the water level gets above the door frames. It goes into the shops. This guy was an apothecary or herbalist, so he met with us and told us what he did. It turns out most people in Vietnam are covered by government health insurance, but government health insurance doesn't cover most of your bills. 60% of the hospital bill you have to pay out of pocket. So it covers a portion of your expense. And so the herbalists are very popular because they try to treat you for a small amount of money, non-Western medicine. But he showed us his house. He has to take all the furniture and put it on the second level when the floods come. And probably I did that the month after this. In Hoi An, in the old town, they have these lanterns that are very popular. They're on the boats, they're in the stores, they're in the streets. But at the lantern shop, everyone wants to get their picture taken. So they have like a chair where you could sit down or just go in and get your photograph taken. This was really one of my favorite shots there at Hoi An, because here is an Irish bar. You can see the bartender taking a picture of the mother and baby and father. And then another couple here, she's drinking Guinness beer. But here in the middle of Vietnam. Some people have called this the Venice of Vietnam, but they have a lot of boats, and if you'd like to go on a little boat ride at night, they would take you out there. This is a picture of the Japanese covered bridge at night. Again, at night, the old town, people wear traditional outfits occasionally. They closed the old town to traffic, motor vehicle traffic, so that people could, it's just pedestrian in the old town, old part of the city, which is kind of nice. Here's another dragon dance ceremony, and again, this is in Hoi An at night, and symbolism of the dragon dance is it's supposed to bring you prosperity and longevity. So a lot of people hire these guys to come over. This is Nha Trang. Nha Trang is like many of the cities I saw there. It's about 500,000 people. It's a coastal city, beautiful beach. I went there on the night of the September full moon. And many of the people celebrate the full moon festival, kind of like we might have a harvest moon here. But this was the day leading to the night of the full moon festival. And you can see all the high-rises. This is typical of most of the big cities we went to, a lot of high-rises. Outside of Nha Trang is this town called Mai Son. And Mai Son is like a jungle area where the Champa people came from Cambodia and east, from west from there. And they came and set up the civilization between 400 and 1400 AD. And it was based on Hindu worship. And so now India, because of the strong association with Hinduism, has come and wanted to rebuild this Mai Son village. And so you got to go into the village and see the ruins, and they're working on rebuilding us. During the Vietnam War, many of the Viet Cong hid in these areas in Mai Son, and so there was a lot of bombing of the Americans of these old historical buildings because of the location of the Viet Cong there. But it was nice to see what's there now and what they're working on as far as rebuilding. No velociraptors, but because it was so long ago when the people lived in Mai Son, there's some stone stela that tell them some of the ceremonies they had there. The written word on parchment all disappeared over the years, but they have performers who try to perform what they thought to be the dances from the time of the Champa people. We went to a women's shelter. This husband and wife take care of unwed mothers, and they've adopted 14 children themselves. And here's the woman. The group I went with, they sponsor this shelter, so they send money to them to help them keep it open. This is a college student. She got pregnant in her first year in school. And then in Vietnam, if you're not married and you're pregnant, your family disowns you. And so the abortion rate in Vietnam is higher than the United States. So many women like this come to a shelter like this. She was going to carry the baby until term and then give it to this family to adopt. But her family wouldn't help her, apparently. Also in Nha Trang is this Buddhist, like a mountain called Long Song Pagoda. At the bottom of the mountain is the statue of the Buddha. And then as you go up, there's the sleeping Buddha halfway up the mountain. You can see the symbol that we often refer to as a swastika. It opens to the left, whereas the symbol that the Nazis used opened to the right. The Nazis co-opted the Buddhist symbol. The Buddhist symbol stands for love and prosperity, whereas that wasn't so much with what happened with the Nazis. But this symbol is found a lot in the Buddhist temples that I've seen. This sleeping Buddha is 17 meters long and 5 meters across the shoulders, and really quite impressive. On the top of the mountain is the Buddha, sitting Buddha, and he's 170 feet tall. So you can see him from much of the city, and he looks out on the city of Nha Trang. although I don't see helmets here, a woman designed or bought a safety seat for her child. You can see it sits in the motorcycle. It doesn't look like it's strapped in at all, so if she got in an accident, that child would be probably shot out. But it does have a little seat belt there, and it seems maybe better than sitting on the back of her. This is the night of the full moon, and so the town has about 500,000 people, but at least 100,000 came out for this festival. So the beach was filled with people, and all the streets and all the restaurants was full. Here the people are coming down. When I rode the motorcycle, they give you a helmet, like the Grab driver, but they're just thin plastic, and there's no insulation, so I can't imagine it would be very protective if you got into a collision where you were thrown from the motorcycle. We went up to the Mile High City, Dalat. It's referred to in Wikipedia as the city of eternal spring because of its elevation. It doesn't have the tropical heat that you get down by the coast. And so it's great for growing things. And they have about 100,000 greenhouses in Dalat. They grow mostly flowers for export, but they also grow vegetables and fruit. Some beautiful flowers. Here's a woman after harvesting the flowers. And these go around the world. I mean, probably more to Asia and Southeast Asia, but really they ship those around the world.
Is it some kind of zinnia or?
You got me.
Okay.
A pretty flower.
Yes, it is.
Dalat has a botanic garden, which was really spectacular because everything that grows there grows so well. And so I got a few shots of their botanic garden.
It's a wacky tree.
I don't know what kind of tree that is. But really everything that bloomed seemed like was in bloom when I visited. I went to Dalat University and met with some college students. This gentleman, his father was a Communist Party official, and so he said he thought the government was doing a good job trying to help everyone. The young lady, she is studying to be a teacher. She told me that when she finishes her teaching degree, she will have to bribe a communist official to get a job. She said that if she wants a good job in Saigon or Ho Chi Minh City or Hanoi or Dalat, she would have to give 10 years of salary, about $30,000 bribe to get that job. The way they get the money back is they get their $3,000 a year, and then most of the parents who have one or two children, there are not a lot of families with more than two children, mostly one child, they want their kid to do well, so they send their kids to tutors. And so these kids will pay the teacher to tutor them after school, so they make a lot of their money back by tutoring. But it seems like part of the corruption system where you have to bribe people to get the work. I went to a coffee plantation in Dalat. It was up high enough, the coffee grows quite well. The coffee, the fruit of the coffee is the mature ones are the red ones. If you squeeze open the red fruit, out comes the coffee bean, and then you take those coffee beans and you roast them, and then you make coffee. Or you could feed them to the weasel. Now, there was a movie, The Bucket List, in 2008, Jack Nicholson and Morgan Freeman. And one of the bucket list items one of the guys wanted was to drink civet coffee. And civet coffee was supposedly $100 a cup in France. They have it in Vietnam. It doesn't cost $100, it's more like $10 a cup, but that's a lot of money in Vietnam.
Weasel eat the coffee bean. So what is that animal?
It's a weasel.
Weasel?
And weasel. And they poop the bean onto the tray. Because they can digest the fruit, but not the bean. And so the coffee fruit comes into the weasel on the top and then comes out like this. Then they separate it, they roast it, and then they sell it to Americans. But she let us try it, so she made some of this coffee for us. And I would say it was a good, I mean, unlike the durian, it was actually good coffee. It was strong. It stains your teeth yellow, but otherwise, you know, it was, I would say worth, maybe worth $10 in the United States, but in Vietnam, you know, everything is cheap. $10 is a lot of money. These are the people in my group. We're going on a tractor into a town that is restricted. You can't go there if you're just a regular tourist. You have to get a permit. And this is a town of Montagnard people. These are non-Viet type people. They used to be a nomadic population, and they would use slash and burn agriculture to make a living. Now the communist government built this town for them, and they gave them homes. So it's the homes are very nice, even though the people seem to be fairly poor. The homes are nice. The group I went with used money to build a school for this town. But I think somebody might have seen this photo, but the people are very photogenic and don't mind having their picture taken. This is the mayor of the town and his wife, who's got very good feet, who can hold that and weave these shawls for people. And then they're for sale if one wanted to buy one. These are the Montagnards. You may have seen this picture. It's a classic photo from 1963. A Buddhist monk poured gasoline over himself and lit himself on fire in the streets of Saigon. And after this photo, President Kennedy, we were just a little bit involved in Vietnam at the time, but said we really have to go in there and straighten things out. Well, it turns out the monk, a Buddhist monk, was protesting the treatment of the Buddhists by the South Vietnamese government. And after we got more involved, then we got rid of the president of the South Vietnam, but he was not protesting communism, he was really protesting the mistreatment of the Buddhists. This is the site today where that Buddhist monk was burned. And now they have a shrine. One quarter of the intersection is now a park dedicated to the monk. So there's the monk, the flames behind him. And the other side of the intersection, they have the ashes of the monk entombed and for people to make pilgrimage there. So this is a very special street corner for the Buddhists in Saigon. This is not an atypical street scene in Ho Chi Minh City. These are cobblers, so you could bring your shoes there, leave them overnight, and they'll fix them for you. But they work right in the street, and I didn't have any trouble with my shoes, so I didn't try them on. Ho Chi Minh City is a very modern city. It reminds me of downtown Chicago. They have high-rises, they have colored lights in the buildings. They have these statues, which you see in many tourist areas, gold and silver. This is City Hall, and communist leader outside the City Hall. But they filmed The Quiet American right around the corner. There's a hotel over here where many of the GI officers went to have coffee or a bar. And, so this is a very popular area of Ho Chi Minh City. Then we went to the Mekong Delta. The Mekong River runs down from China all the way to the South China Sea. But we got on this big boat and then went up the Mekong.
It's a very lively river.
And we got to these small tributary, or we got on these sampan boats.
We're on a sampan, riding a small tributary of the Mekong Delta. It's a little bit warm, so we're having fun.
We went up the Mekong to an island, to this guy's house. This guy had about 1 acre that he farmed. He was very proud of his farming. He made $5,000 last year in farming, which is a fairly good salary for a farmer there in Vietnam. He has internet, which is amazing to me. And he studied on the internet how to become an organic farmer. And so he took the classes and then he took the test online, and he got from the government the certificate that says he's an organic farmer. So he's very proud that he is an organic farmer. This is one of the crops he grows. It's an orange fruit. I think it's just for coloration of other foods, but he was a character. He liked to run off, so he put this as a hat. But the fruit, this colored fruit, you would chop up and then you'd add it to other foods and turn them an orange color. We went to a coconut factory where they take coconut, put chocolate in, and make little candies. But at the end of the tour, they had this, what they call aphrodisiac water, and basically alcohol with a cobra inside.
Oh, yeah.
They give you these little shot glasses to drink if you want to drink. For lunch, we had this elephant ear fish. It was really delicious, although it doesn't look like it. All the food in Vietnam was excellent. You can't go hungry while you're there. It's really, really good. And then lastly, we went to the Cu Chi tunnels. Cu Chi tunnels are underground. They're near the Cambodian border, and many of the Viet Cong hid out in these tunnels. They would bring people there who were injured for surgery, so they had operating rooms. They also had meeting rooms where they would plan the fight against the South. If they would be bombed, they would go down to the lower levels, or they could even escape through the river. But now it's a tourist area, so you pay to go through the tunnels, but you're allowed to go in, and it's fairly cramped. You have to maybe 3.5 feet tall. But they have a makeshift operating room down there. And again, the Americans and the South Vietnamese armies would come through here. When they were coming, they would hide and they would close off the entrance so it was hard to even see that you were over the tunnel.
What if you're fat?
Yeah. These two guys are Viet Cong. Now they're retired, of course. And the guy on the far right, he is an American serviceman who fought in Da Nang. He was a teacher who was drafted, and then he was an interpreter during the war. So he learned Vietnamese. And so we had lunch at this guy's house, and the two Viet Cong told us that their children, by going on the internet, found that the real reason the Americans came over to Vietnam and fought the war was to prevent communism from taking over. They were told that during the war that we were trying to take over their country, and so they were fighting ferociously to prevent us from taking over the country, but they said now they appreciate that we weren't there to take over the country, and now apparently we're all good friends. But, they were very friendly, very hospitable. This is my last shot, but I would say overall it was a great experience, great food, very friendly people. The government's a little corrupt, not the worst in the world, but I think if you don't do things illegally, you avoid that durian in your hotel room.
How long were you there, Jim?
3 weeks.
Jim, tell us a little bit about what you had to do to prepare for yourself to take this trip.
From a medical standpoint, I took a typhoid vaccine. You don't need yellow fever vaccine anymore. Malaria is in Vietnam, but it's mainly near the Cambodian border. And so I decided that our time near the Cambodian border was small. I would use insect spray and spray my clothes with permethrin. So I didn't use malaria medicine. And then many of the people I went with would eat fruits and salads or whatever they served, they would eat it. But when I go to a country like this, I avoid the water and I don't eat things that aren't peeled and I don't eat fresh salad. And otherwise, Vietnam was closed for a long time. Now you need a visa to go there. And the visa is kind of a hassle because it took a lot of paperwork, but I think $70 and you got a visa. So a visa, some limited medication. Then, of course, taking medication with me for traveler's diarrhea, because any third world country like this, you might get gastroenteritis. And so I took Pepto-Bismol with me. I only needed it, I think, 1 day. And going across the world is hard on the body. It's 12 hours difference. So right now it's 8 a.m. On a Tuesday in Vietnam. So it's hard to get used to that long time zone. So I went 2 days early so I could prepare mentally for when I met the group to be on somewhat of a schedule.
And what about for your photography or, you know, your personal items? Did you take a backpack or?
I had a suitcase and a backpack, and I brought, almost all my pictures are with the Canon 5D Mark IV, and then I use a 35 to 105 lens for almost all the photos. I didn't bring a flash, so on the interior pictures, I boosted the ISO to get good lighting. And I hate to admit this, but I took 1,800 pictures. So, you know, I showed 180, but, you know, 10% of what I took. So the ones that are too dark or not, I didn't show. But, yeah, I find it's hard to bring a flash, and then people don't like flash. And so I just find boosting the ISO. And my camera really can take good photos at 1,600 ISO. And so I often go up to that. Rarely I go to 6,400 if it's dark indoors and I really want to get a shot, but you can see green like that.
And did you research some of the places that you were going to see, to look at photographs of them and figure out, you know, how you wanted to capture some of these things, or did you do any of that?
Yeah, but before I go on a trip like this, I always look at each of the cities I'm going, and then I look at photographs online of what people have taken. And so I get ideas of what might be interesting. And I mean, I didn't know anything about the city of Hue, but it's really one of the gems of Vietnam. There's nice things in Hanoi and nice things in Ho Chi Minh City, but Hue and Dalat and really some beautiful things in Hoi An. And so there's a photographer in Hoi An. He's world famous. He's a French photographer, but he lives in Hoi An. He's done many National Geographic specials on the indigenous people in the mountains of Vietnam. And so we went to his studio, and I got to see all his work. And this one of the other guys I was with, he bought a number of his large blow-up, several $1,000s of images. But yeah. So I like to see what people have done before I go, especially national parks in the US. I always do that.
Thank you very much. It was just wonderful.
Thank you.
Jim, tell me again,
Pardon me?
what lens did you use most of?
I used the 35 to 105, the L lens, Canon.
35 millimeter.
35 to 105. It's a zoom.
Oh, the 105, okay.
So I like to not change lenses, but I like to have a broad range of wide angle versus telephoto. And so, and when I went to Africa, I took that, plus I took 100 to 400 to get the animals, but here, most of people, actually
Terrific,
up
terrific.
close.
Thank you.
Where are you going next, Jim?
California,
Where?
California,
Oh, okay.
big grandchildren photos.
Oh, it's so good.
Thank you for your, with the Alaska trip, that was wonderful.
Yeah, it was.
I wanted to thank everyone for coming tonight. We had 2 wonderful presentations of trips. And we will see you in a couple of weeks for the swap. Yes, Kim?
I have one thing I wanted to say. Our group does a lot of traveling, obviously. So I wanted to let you guys know that we have a travel agent in our camera club. Susan has just started to get into travel agencies and her own getting her own business up. And you've got a Facebook page you're getting up now, and you're going to be you're already taking some customers already. But if you're interested,
Cool.
Also, the Springfield Camera Club, when we were looking for holiday light shows to photograph, I emailed their president and she sent back a note that on a week from Wednesday, which would be the 7th of December, they're gonna meet at some church near downtown where they always have their camera club, and then they're gonna walk around the old Capitol area and take pictures of the holiday lights. I put out an email, but it probably didn't get to all our new folks, so I need to email her at some point, this week to let her know if anyone's coming, and then she'll send us directions. So,
Well, thank you. Was there
so
anything
let me
else?
know.
Did you have something?
No.
I can just send out an email and
Okay.
people can, Martha and John were marginally interested, but, so,
It was gonna be in the evening then?
yeah, they were gonna meet, I don't know, just before dark at the church.
Oh, did you see any
Everybody
dog in
used
the
the
market?
facilities and then start walking, and then they were gonna go